All right, and we're back with another edition of the Diamond Anvil Too Hard to Smash, featuring my Coloradan counterpart here, the originator of the show, really, Mr. Moriello, Diamond from the Oppenheimer Ranch Product and Magnetic Reversal News, the two YouTube channels. How are things out at the ranch?
Hot and dry. We're in a fire weather warning, and hasn't rained probably 14 days. Well, actually, the last thing it did was snow. And now we're in a week. We went from winter to summer, which is usually how it is. Wow.
All right. So you're getting pretty low temperatures at night and quite high temperatures in the day, huh? Not a lot of cloud cover.
We have 300 days of sun here, so it's mostly not cloud cover. It goes from 30 to 80 is about the average, 50-degree swing.
Not a lot of greenhouse effect, which is primarily caused on this planet by this thing we call water vapor, I would say. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, actually, it's cloudy here. It's warmer, and the clouds keep the heat, the ground at the surface here. We're up the mountains, so the only way we can have a warm evening is that it's cloudy.
Yeah. That makes sense. So what we're looking at here is an electron micrograph of an insect, I think. What insect is this? I've got the page open.
This is a genetically modified mosquito that they're about to release in the state of Florida.
It's designed to murder me, and it's genetically designed to do what?
It's designed to infect the genetics of the population of mosquitoes that carry the Zika virus.
Oh, I see.
And there has been no the precautionary principle has been thrown to the wind here, because you need 10 years of a study for something like this to put a genetically modified animal into the biome to even begin to understand the effects. But they don't care, because they love you so much, they're going to just let these babies go and cross their fingers.
Well, what could possibly go wrong? Well, let's don't do the list of what could possibly go wrong, but okay, let's do the list. What could possibly go wrong?
Okay, so they're genetically modifying an insect to attack a group of insects to make them sterile. Okay.
Hold on, they have to physically.
Now these are insects that
they have to physically attack the other insects.
No, what these genetically modified versions will go into the population, start mating, and they make the entire population sterile because they're passing the sterility gene from insect to insect.
I see.
And these are mosquitoes which sting humans. And who's to say that sterility gene wouldn't affect humans?
Well,
because these are the mosquitoes giving us the Zika virus, for goodness sake.
Not only that,
there is no testing, so we don't know what's happening.
Not only that, what if it killed off all mosquitoes? What if it accidentally killed off all mosquitoes? You think that might mess up the ecosystem? Let me touch my face as we ponder that. You think if all mosquitoes, you know how people idiotically say, if we could wipe out all the mosquitoes on Earth, that would be great, except the ecosystem would crumble and have to evolve to have to deal with that into something unlike what we see. Because think about how many larvae are consumed by amphibians and the entire food chain, portions of it, which are relied on by other portions.
Mosquitoes are a huge food source to huge phyla, from fish, bats. A single bat can eat 1.5 million mosquitoes in like a week. So it would be detrimental to the entire food web.
Yeah, so now I don't know much about the Zika virus. Can you tell me and the viewers a bit about that? Because I don't know very much of anything about it. I know a bit about West Nile because we get that here, and this is the kind of virus that makes me go, I'm not scared of that. It seems like most people get no symptoms to the sniffles, just saying. But I'm just scrolling the article.
It kills babies, and it causes a condition called encephalitis, where you basically the brain is reduced in size, and you have an alien-looking baby. It's very tragic. So
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is the problem with Zika. It's young mothers.
Okay, I think I remember reading stories about that now that I think about it. So, what's your forecast on the results of this one? You think it's going to be successful? Do you think it's going to significantly reduce mosquito populations?
I don't think no and no. It's not going to be successful. It will not reduce mosquito populations, and some other third non-considered event will occur, where
Ah,
they'll
yes.
actually have some kind of immunity or mutation, and they'll make a super Zika, some kind of super Zika mosquito.
Yeah, from back here behind the toilet paper microphone, we try to consider unintended consequences. It's sort of important. So, yeah, I don't
And
know.
we do have examples of this. So let's just talk about genetically modified food. Monsanto, Bayer, and Syngenta claim that their GMO products would be higher yield and require less chemicals and less water and be more flavorful and save the planet. But they knew all along that that wasn't true. And after the first GMOs hit the market, within a decade, the yields were lower. The chemicals they were using to suppress the weeds were being beaten by the weeds. They were growing super weeds. They were also creating super bugs. So the pesticides weren't killing all the bugs, and some of them were mutating into super bugs. So those are the unintended consequences with genetically modified food: super bugs, super weeds, and less yield. So what could possibly go wrong with genetically modified mosquitoes, I ask you?
I think it's way worse. It's way worse than superbugs because you have it killing off some bugs too, like with neonicotinoids. It's worse than just superbugs. It's some superbugs that you don't want and some non-superbugs that you do want. This is part of the reason why we don't cut down certain plants in the backyard. We have a sort of a wildlife refuge set up. Hey, check it out, Diamond. It's your it's your favorite company in the universe. And
Yeah.
so, part of the honoring of my late grandmother is to have the yard set up as a wildlife refuge. And so a lot of the principles of permaculture we've been doing for decades here.
Nice.
When somebody comes over and they say, "Hey, we can make your grass much greener and lusher by throwing a bunch of messed up chemicals on it," I go, "Well, we throw chemicals on it. It's called the other parts of the grass that get cut, and then we leave that stuff we leave that stuff alone, and we don't even water it." But I have crazy strains of grass here, Diamond. I don't think I've ever talked about this on either of our channels. I grow creeping arboreal red fescue. So I've basically seeded the whole entire area around here with this insane grass from northern Canada. It doesn't care about alkalinity, salinity, shade. It doesn't care about too much sun. It doesn't care about too dry, about too wet. It doesn't care about any of that. It just creeps around eventually. As long as you don't beat it up when it's young, like it doesn't react well to traffic when it's recently planted. But besides that,
Go
once
back to that bear picture. I want to do a little synopsis on bear. So for most people, they don't know this, but Bayer and Monsanto have been the same entity since 1901. And let me just run down the timeline for you.
what?
In
They've been the same
1901,
entity since
Monsanto became a
1901.
corp. Listen,
That's weird.
Monsanto became a corporation in 1901.
Hmm.
They merged or changed into Bayer in a few decades. They also produced the most deadly over-the-counter medication, which you can still buy in dollar stores, called aspirin. For $1, you can get 80 pills and off yourself in about an hour.
What's so bad about
So
aspirin?
Monsanto, it's just sold over the counter, and it's the most dangerous over the counter medication that anyone that wants to kill themselves just take 20.
I
He's
used
dead.
I used to use it as a performance
So
enhancing
it's
substance.
not bad. It's not bad. It's the most dangerous over the counter shit you can buy, and it costs $1. It's made by a corporation that doesn't care if you kill yourself. That's my point. So Monsanto becomes Bayer, and then by the Second World War, um, Bayer and Monsanto are called Monsanto Bayer, and they invent Agent Orange for the war, Monsanto Bayer. And then they split again, and Bayer becomes a pharmaceutical company, and Monsanto continues with biological weapons, and then all of a sudden makes food. And then they take over the food supply because they're reusing the old biological weapons from the war to spray on your food. And then Bayer figures that out, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. And they get into the same chemical seed synergistic genetically modified research starting in the 80s. And this all came out of a patent, which was in a type of corn that they genetically modified. And the corn was genetically modified to create sterile humans. So a human eats the corn and they become sterile, a form of like, if instead of getting my tubes tied, I can just eat this corn and I become sterile. Now, there's no evidence that they removed that genetic modification from the original corn strain. And then the first thing to hit the market that was accepted by the FDA was genetically modified corn.
What would be the purpose?
By the way, birth rates and fertility has been dropping since the 90s.
Well,
and the purpose is depopulation.
In places,
that is the purpose of these evil corporations.
In places
slow, sick depopulation where they get billions of dollars on inflammatory disease and diabetes. It's $1 trillion industry. It goes from potato chips to the hospital. It all goes through the hands of Bayer and Monsanto.
Yeah. But it's not everywhere in the world. In some places, GMOs are illegal. Like in Europe, GMOs are illegal, correct?
Growing GMOs are banned. That's correct. That doesn't mean that they don't have Doritos there.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I see what you're saying. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, geez.
The processed food that's created by these corporations are in every country, third world countries especially. When you bring a little bag of chips for a quarter to a third world country, that becomes a dinner. So basically, by making the entire population, 90% of us, poor and subjugated, think about it. 30 years ago, I thought that there was the American dream and all that. And the average hourly wage stayed the same for 3 decades of my life. When I was 16, I had a job at $16 an hour. By the time I was 28, the average person was getting $10 an hour. That's crazy.
You, sir, are Generation X, really? and so am I. You're kind of more in the meaty range of Generation X, and I'm only 2 years from being a millennial. But how about this for a segue? Holy macaroni! Do you see what's on my screen right now? Are you seeing what's on my screen? Macaroni.
Macaroni and cheese ravioli.
Yeah, which is macaroni.
Holy macaroni.
I finally figured it out. I got to the bottom of the holy macaroni. Because I've been watching your channel for a long time, and I've heard you said holy macaroni like thousands of times probably. And I finally figured it out, and we've already devised a recipe for this. So I know you don't hang out in the comments section of smAsho Mash on YouTube, but I don't make mac and cheese. Mac and cheese has too low of a protein content to be legit, but mac ham and cheese is just on the fringe of having enough protein to be acceptable. So we're gonna make it. We're gonna get some kind of Italian style ham, uncured, no sodium nitrite, and we're gonna buy some kind of cheesy grocery store like ready-made raviolis, but then we're gonna put the legit organic pasta in there with the ham, and it'll be the holy macaroni. We're gonna write a recipe, so look for that coming in the next couple weeks. That's your fault. That is entirely your fault, sir. What do you have to say?
Mac and cheese is a side dish. Smash, by the way.
Oh well, yeah. Well, if you put it chock full of uncured ham, though, it could be a main course. You just have to And you got to put some gooey cheese in there too. You got to put some. I don't know. I'm not a big ricotta guy,
Yeah,
but
well,
I may have to
that's
get
all.
some.
That's hamburger helper.
Yeah,
So I prefer the ground beef method.
I would pack this with cheddar and, but for this one because it has to have macaroni, and when I make mac and cheese I always make mac ham and cheese. It's look, you can alter the recipe. I was sharing with one of my colleagues from work. The she's kind of the office manager for the whole lab. Her name's Mary. She's very nice. She's one of the first people I spoke with at my current employer, and she wanted some recipes. I have this one called Toxo Bakes. It's like a taco bake, but it's good. And maybe we'll. In fact, I'll have to make a video about that one too, because that's a pretty good one. Toxo Bakes. It's TAXOBAXE. Toxo Bakes. So, did you ever hear of a taco bake? It's a very basic recipe. It's pretty much like if you took tacos and smashed them up and made a casserole out of them or something like that. That's basically what it is.
Visualize that.
It's not going to have Doritos in it though, so don't worry about that. So, what do you think about cosmology? You want to like talk about cosmology on today's? Oh, check it out. There's a good screenshot.
I just touched my face a couple times.
Did you? Yeah, I gotta apply some Gold Bond now that you mention it. I don't know if you can see what. There you go. Look. Yes. Well, it'll show up in the final video regardless. Yeah, touch your face and make sure that you're not one of them. Everybody who's watching right now, if you feel itchy, blame the government or whatever company's forcing you to do it. Wear a mask. Are you wearing a mask? Right. If you're wearing a mask while watching this video, please leave a comment and please leave a comment as to how itchy your face is right now.
This is my banana. And I eat banana every day, so I could just use this when I go shopping now. It smells great. It smells like banana.
Do you think it's possible that COVIDiots will be the word of the year this year? I think we should I think that should be the ultimate most important campaign, because new words get created and new thoughts arrive in people's brains, and sometimes their heads go out of their ass. It's really good. And Diamond's now French kissing a dog. We try to keep it NC-17 or lower rating here. As long as there's no rated NC what comes after NC-17? We try to keep it rated R or okay, we'll keep it rated R and avoid NC-17. So yeah, anything else about genetically modified mosquitoes being deployed to kill mosquitoes by, well, it's just mosquito birth control. It's really not very scary. It's not much scarier than the COVID.
No, not at all.
All right, well that's good. That's good news. Is it a sharticle though? It's not a sharticle, is it?
I didn't read it. I just saw that picture before we started, and I was like, "Wow, that's better than Nibiru if we use it as a cover."
That should be Nibiru. Yeah. So hey, I want to make a video of parts of the yard. I want to make like a segment on these videos for you to evaluate areas and like give me ideas of what I should do in certain spots. Like there's this one spot where water kind of. My grandfather, he used to be a surveyor and a real estate nerd for Bethlehem Steel, and also before that, his area of expertise, what he went to school for at Lehigh University was mining engineering. That's his thing. So he's done some modifications to the yard that mean that we have to turn it into a even nicer yard. and it requires just a couple little tweaks will make water features just show up that are just so amazing that, I don't know, maybe code enforcement won't like it, but we'll just get a permit then and say, okay, we've paid $8, is it okay now? And they'll probably say it's okay. Even though they're...
Well, you basically just need swales to capture water and move it where you want it.
Yeah, and that's what he's done. He's built the basis for them. He spent probably 5 weeks taking half of the sod on part of the front yard and picking it up and moving it around and then moving fill around, and like he got crazy with it, and it was all shovel and wheelbarrow. No kind of like heavy equipment. So, did you hear about the closest black?
Let's talk about something.
Did you hear about the closest black hole to Earth? We're on smashomash.com/forum now. Oh, it's
Yes,
stabbed.
I've seen all the nonsense.
Which nonsense? I don't post nonsense. Come on.
Black hole.
Well, I usually call it a massive radio source, but this time it's not a radio source. It's dark. So what's going on here is you've got this star, which is orbiting something that isn't emitting any photons, and then you've got this star, which is orbiting the same something that's not emitting a lot of photons. And then it even looks like the thing that's not emitting a lot of photons is also moving, as if there's a barycenter with these two stars orbiting each other. But all we see at this focal length is these two stars. That's too much drawing. What you don't want to do, by the way, for all you people who are like new content creators, when you're drawing things
It's an anti-sun.
When you're drawing things on these sorts of things, don't draw anything too crazy, because people will get offended and they'll say that you're vulgar and that it's a sign of low IQ. And you'll be very scared and you'll be very worried that you have a low IQ or that you're average or something like that. So don't have that happen. Anyway, this is just an artist's impression, but that's kind of what's going on. You've got an inner star and an outer star, and they've got different orbital periods. The one's very eccentric, and the other one's not very eccentric, but they both appear to be orbiting something that's not emitting any photons, I guess. Is basically what it is. But it's now the closest... It's now the closest object...
They can detect.
Yeah, it's now the closest object believed to be a black hole, though. But when you see stars doing a crazy orbit, you know, having crazy tidal forces and doing things that are weird. Now let's talk about this one now. This is a good one. The Pulsar Wind Nebula. And yeah, check this thing out.
Move my face.
There we go. That's good. Yeah, so on this one, we've got a bow shock right here. And the proper motion of this pulsar is in this direction, as indicated by this arrow. See, our viewers aren't going to believe that white arrow. They're going to think that's fake news. And then you've got these polar fields. These look like the Z fields. So these are like the Z field jets coming out of this star, which is a pulsar. And then you've got
What's the dimensions on the length of that object? Is it like 10 light years long?
Right there, 4 arc minutes. But I don't know.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know what the distance is. It's believed to be, I think this is believed to be 3,000 light years out. So what, I don't know. I don't know what the formula is for that, but it's at the stellar scale. It's a massive star. I think it's pretty safe to say, and not blaspheme anybody who wants to watch our channel or whose channel I want to watch, to say that it's a massive star. Probably more massive than the sun, certainly more active than the sun. But I think the interesting thing here is the fact that you've got a bow shock out here. You know, it's very anisotropic. It appears to be moving at a significant velocity in this direction. So you've got that white arrow there, That's the proper motion of it. And, you know, it's kind of acting like a comet. And I mean, we've talked about this before, how we see neutron stars, massive radio sources that are believed to be neutron stars, that are moving at speeds rivaling that of the solar wind. So,
well, that actually looks like an arrow and probably pointing to God. So can you just go a little to the left and we'll figure it all out?
Oh wait. Okay, that's blasphemy. No, but seriously though, I think it's very interesting because you've got these Z fields here, and this certainly looks like Z field jets. These are probably the solar jets of this star. So like on the sun, if this was the sun, you would be on this plane. You'd be somewhere out in this plane,
Yeah.
right? But you'd be very close to it compared to this because this is like an illuminated version of the heliosphere, I think. And it's not to say that the sun's doing anything differently, although the proper motion, like if you decided to view the sun from here while orbiting this object, who knows what it would look like? It could look totally distorted from that point. But anyway, that is a very interesting one. I think this is much more interesting than the closest quote black hole end quote. But we picked up that one, and the website doesn't really need to cover this one, but it is very interesting to see that much. I believe the different colors here represent different grades of redshift. There's probably radio and X-ray all overlaid on each other. Probably visible light too. Color-coded, background subtracted data. I mean, it looks pretty blurry, so it's...
Yeah.
But you notice the way it's not like you see just a coherent Birkeland current. It's not like this thing is moving down a Birkeland current, because it would be cleared out. That's not the way that it would look. There'd be plasma, and it's these fields coming out like this are the key.
It looks like a plasma tail to me with a bow shop.
Yeah, but I think the
like a comet. I mean, it looks like a comet with a bow shop visible.
Hey, did you hear about I just saw like a little blurb about Comet Swan, and
I've been following it every hour for about 3 weeks. It actually has been diminishing over the last 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is that
instead of brightening, it's weakening.
Yeah, but it recently spewed out a whole bunch of hydrogen. So that's yet another thing that's not particularly expected for a comet. Practically everything that we see a comet do nowadays, because the resolution and the ability to look at spectroscopy and figure out what chemicals are out there in space, the more we get, the better we get at that, the more every single thing that we see is a discovery. It's like, oh my gosh, there's carbon monoxide coming out of the comet. Well, oh my gosh, there's this or that.
This is all based. It's all based on the composition of the rock that they call a comet, first of all, and Swan is now moving through the electrical field from those minor CMEs that you and I talked about a week ago. So that electrical change in environment could have caused the comet to release the hydrogen.
Absolutely.
I mean that's just very logical.
That would be like,
not like, and then when NASA's like, we're baffled on how this could happen, you're like, what are you studying?
Yeah, I mean, I think a thing like that, you could say, look, that comet is acting like that induction is acting like a coronal hole in reverse, because if there's a liquid metallic hydrogen core of that comet, certain levels of induction could actually cause that to happen. It would, if it steals too much, if the induction from the solar protons steal too many electrons out of it, it'll become unstable. That's probably what's going on. And in fact, that's a good argument as to what happened on Mars. If your planet runs out of electrons, your planet is out of luck, perhaps. So, I mean, hopefully that's not something that we're looking at now, which is why today's video is entitled, Where Have All the Electrons Gone? But so far it looks
We're
pretty
having a
normal. Yeah, it's as the sun picks up in intensity, it might be retaining a lot of that because the fields are gaining strength. So at solar minimum, it's very predictable to figure out when the electron flux will show up based on solar wind data. So when the solar wind gets fast and high density, like during a coronal hole wind stream, for instance, afterwards there's usually a string of electrons following that. And the more we look at the data, the less it looks like those are coming out of the Earth. So, hey, maybe Neil Thompson's right. Maybe the Earth is just a metal ball with a crust on the outside. What do you think?
No.
By the way, here's another image of Pulsar 1929 plus 10. This is the XMM Newton version of it. And it's not quite as good. It still does show you the proper motion there. But it doesn't have so many overlays on it. This is probably, geez, that might just be visible, actually. It doesn't look like radio or X-rays. So that's another interesting cosmology story. And here's the most interesting cosmology story. In the last 7 years, it's 40 lines of evidence for condensed matter, the sun on trial, liquid metallic hydrogen as a solar building block. You know there's graphics in here, right? Oh my gosh! Look at the high res. So why do you think Robitaille thinks sunspots?
Look at those granules.
Why do you think Robitaille thinks sunspots are dark?
Why do you think? Because when we look at them, they're dark.
Well, I believe what he thinks is going on is that this area.
In fact, during the eruption of Tambora back in 1815, the year without a summer, people on Earth could see sunspots because the sun was so occulted by ash. You could look up and see the sunspots. That's pretty darn badass.
Yeah, that would be cool. Just a natural solar filter. You can look at it and not go blind in seconds. But
you probably were still going a little blind, but.
But seriously though, why do you think? I mean, I have a theory as to why Robitaille thinks. What Robitaille's theory as to why sunspots are dark is, but I mean, I think it comes down to the fact that this object is very big. This is probably the size of South America or something like that, and I think the reason this looks dark is because this area underneath here that looks black is flat. And because of the way metals...
It is. It's flat and it's cold.
Well, it's flat and it appears cold because it's emitting like this. The emission comes out like this. That's part of the reason why you see the penumbra there. Because the emissions start to...
That's the black body emission?
Well, this is the umbra, and this is the penumbra.
Penumbra.
Yeah. And I think, and it seems to make sense actually, if you have a very, very flat piece of metal that's very hot and it's emitting light, if you're looking at it perfectly perpendicular to a flat plane, the light's going to mainly come out like this. Because you're looking through, the distance between where this turns black and where this ends up at the photosphere is like thousands and thousands of miles of thickness. So when you're looking at these things, you're really looking down a tube, which means the object this black portion underneath is probably very, very flat from our perspective because we're right on the ecliptic plane and the sun's very big. So if this area is flat underneath there and it's made of a metallic lattice, the emissions that are going to come out of it are going to come out like this, not toward you, the viewer. And that's part of the reason why we think sunspots are dark. I'm pretty sure that's what Robitaille is saying. I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth because he's got plenty himself. He's got about 8 trillion papers written. But anybody who hasn't read this one, whether I don't care if you're a chemist, an astrophysicist, a regular physicist, it's got so many papers cited. It's got 352 references. This one's from 1958, 2007, How about 1487 to 1492? There's a reference. It doesn't appear to be Columbus, but yeah, it's pretty serious. And look, just because it causes all of cosmology to have to be rewritten doesn't mean we want to see certain famous astronomers, cosmologists, etc., fired, thrown out of their field, shunned from science. That's not a thing. But people seriously have to shift gears because the issues with cosmology are just ridiculous. Hey, check it out. He's got granules.
Yeah.
I think he's trying to get funding from the Daniel Inouye telescope. I think he's sort of trying to. I think he wants to get a grant from them, so he can kind of use their equipment to sort of study granules. For those viewers out here who've never heard of Robitaille, he currently, I believe, he still holds the record for nuclear MRI resolution, which required him to MRI his own head, which his colleagues told him would kill him. But he remains alive. He also took out an ad for $300,000, a full page ad on a Sunday edition of the New York Times, to try to tell people about how the sun's probably not made of a gaseous plasma. But the good news,
dedication.
I think the good news is that it means that stars are much more stable. And no matter how much anybody wants to tell you, I've yet to see a star get born or die. So, it's everybody just please read the 40 proofs. And
yeah, it's ironic. That's funny because when we do see a supernova and it explodes, and we've all been taught that the star is gone, years later we look back up there and there's a star right there. It's still there.
Yeah, how come? It's reached the end of its life and it's exploded into a supernova, and then a little while later it's there again because reasons.
It's still there. Wait a minute, something's wrong.
And we've also seen stars wink out and stars turn back on. There's all kinds of plates of unnamed stars where people are looking at images and they're like, wait a minute, how come that star's not there anymore? Or how come that star is there now even though it wasn't there before? So it's there's a lot of arrogance in the world of cosmology, I'd say. That's part of the reason why I do cosmology segments, because let's just say I've been studying this stuff for a long time. Did I ever show you this one, Diamond? You ever see this? Are you able to see me right now? How about that? It's the Great World Atlas, the Reader's Digest edition.
Oh.
This is like a
nice.
This is like a 1967 edition or something like that. And I discovered this, and I was like 4 years old probably. And here's the crazy page right here. Check this out. I'm going to try to show this. Earth's environs.
You just got too many filters. There's nothing there.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up. But anyway, it's a 1963 copyright image. It's somewhere. It's on my Instagram somewhere. But I started studying cosmic rays. I started studying cosmic rays when I was about, 4 or 5 years old. I was like, what? There's some laser beams that come from space or something like that? Like, that's crazy. How could that be a thing? So I just have a weird, unique resume for understanding this stuff because I've been thinking about it for decades and decades.
Leah and I bought a ranch where the first cosmic ray detectors were thought of and deployed.
Really?
That was Frank Oppenheimer. Yeah.
And were those... So those were to figure out if people were setting off nukes, right?
He said...
They were to determine if other people were setting off nukes, right?
Frank Oppenheimer knew that the galactic cosmic rays and solar cosmic rays were coming in and bombarding us. He just didn't know how to detect them. So that's what his studies were.
Oh, okay.
So he set up photographic plates up into the upper atmosphere and determined that they were there.
So that brings me to an interesting fact. So this here, that right there on the screen, that's Cygnus X3. otherwise known as the star
Yeah.
Deneb. And this thing was discovered in the 1970s, I think it was, 72, I want to say, because somebody built a nuclear weapon detector under 1,000 feet of granite in Minnesota. And guess what they found? They found some really weird 4.8 hour periodicity despite being under 1,000 feet of granite. And that is how this insane massive X-ray binary was discovered. People were like, okay, somebody's obviously not setting off a nuke constantly and then turning it off every 4.8 hours and then turning it back on again. So where is this signal coming from? And I don't know how much that played into the kind of the evolution of cosmic ray science to where Svensmark took it, to where he proved that clouds nucleate because of cosmic ray flux. But yeah,
Well,
that's why we're always talking about X3, because it's pretty interesting for that reason, mainly.
Yeah, so most of Svensmark's work came out of work being done in Tel Aviv on the spiral arms of our galaxy and how they are cosmic ray producers or reducers. So we have this long-term mass extinction cycle or a massive catastrophic environmental change on Earth in the tens of millions of years, which corresponds to our journey through the spiral arms of our galaxy.
Yeah,
And so from that work, Svensmark then started looking into the actual climatic effects of the cosmic rays, and then we are where we are today.
Perhaps it's a push me pull you, where the cosmic rays are somehow instrumental in the real motion with respect to the core of the galaxy from the sun's motion. So, you know, that could be a thing, because I think this is a big problem in cosmology too. People don't understand that there are repulsive forces in space. Space isn't entirely empty. It's pretty hard to go any place and find really empty space. Now, there are voids and stuff like that, but for the most part, space is not empty. And I forget where I was going with this, but there was some purpose to what I was saying there, and I completely lost train of thought.
I gotta feed the pig, so let's say goodbye.
All right, man. Yeah, talk to you soon. We'll be posting this ASAP. Any plugs?
Peace. Watch the diamond anvil.
Cheers. I'll talk to you soon.
Ciao.
And thanks, viewers. We will be producing more content soon. Make sure you check out Oppenheimer Ranch Project on YouTube, as well as Magnetic Reversal News. And thanks again for tuning in. Share on your social media.